The streets are deserted. Everyone's home, just waiting.
There's a way out.
What?
There's always been a way out.
Then why don't we use it?
Look, even I don't have clearance to go in there.
I can't believe I'm here to see
Pull to open.
Pull to open.
Yes, and what do you do?
Every conversation just goes mental.
That's why there's all that gas.
Why would they do that?
Was it good?
Middling.
It's so useless.
Careful now. Back to work.
Listen to this.
Here come the drums.
Harriet Jones, MP for Flydale North. Harriet Jones, MP for Flydale North. Flydale North, Flydale North. Hello, and welcome to Pull to Open, the only podcast that will go through the entire program of Doctor Who in delightfully random order. I'm Pete Paschal.
And I'm Harriet Jones, soon to be Prime Minister. No, I'm Chris Taylor. And Pete and I, a couple of journalists, we've been on this random adventure. As you probably know, this may not be your first Pull to Open rodeo. We've been on this random adventure for some years now. Pete, how many years?
Well, I like to think of the beginning of our run as something like a golden age.
Yes.
And that golden age began at the dawn of 2020, when the Earth really needed a golden age, if you think about it.
It certainly did, yes. And then we were re-elected 3 times and instituted the golden age of randomness is what we brought. It feels like the entire world became a bit more random once we did that. So apologies to anyone who was expecting things to be normal right around now, but I believe that our randomizer messed that up. But let's talk about how the randomizer messed things up. Pete, would you like to update the listeners on the recent mess?
Well, the recent mess, before I get to recent messes, I want to emphasize the randomizer is really one of the most overworked tools in podcasting right now. We lean on this thing for every single podcast, and to come up with something interesting that has connections that we need to unpack with all the stories that we've done and are going to do. And what's going to happen here, guys, is we're going to actually give the randomizer a bit of a rest. Because we are about to enter the zone of actual Doctor Who being made, right? So it's season 2 or series 15, or I forget where we are actually. That's happening very, very shortly. In April, I think it's April 12th or thereabouts is going to happen. Yep. So when people listen to this, I think that's a week or maybe 2 weeks away. I don't know. We're here in places in time and space. We're somewhere mid-March, right around St. Patrick's Day. And so you guys will hear this, and season 2 will be imminent. And then you get Pull to Open in real time. So we will be doing hot takes on every episode that drops, hopefully within of hours, perhaps moments of when they drop. We'll see. I think there's a lot of debate about exactly when they're dropping in season 2, because they would come out the day previous for us, so here in the US, because it would come out midnight at Britain, so we'd get it actually Friday night, and so we'd get our hot takes Friday night. I think that's a little different now. I think we're going to have to deal with midnight, so we might not actually sometimes get it at our hot takes out at midnight, but we are going to get them as close as we can to broadcast time. We'll see.
We're going to have to deal with midnight, and I'm going to start copying everything Pete says, and then start saying stuff ahead of him, which will really freak him out. But that's not that kind of midnight. The other kind of midnight. Yes, we will soon switch to our less random version. We will then be much more caught up on the present news. So whatever's happening for you, dear listener, that we are not yet aware of, when the whole of season 2 dropped on BitTorrent, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about
people still use BitTorrent.
The news that Shooty is going to regenerate into Hugh Grant. We'll be talking about that. I'm making this all up. These are from alternate timelines of what happens in season 2. But let's go back to our random non-mutiny timeline.
You know what I just realized? You could say last random saloon. That's what this podcast is.
Oh, don't make me come up with another verse.
Okay, I won't, but I will tell you where we have been previously on Pull to Open. Okay, so we've had a pretty eclectic random journey in the last few stories. So 3 stories ago, we were at a Series 1 adventure a timey-wimey adventure, an adventure where time itself was wounded. And there was a lot going on with Rose and her family. Interesting. And that was, of course, Father's Day.
That's right. A return to Eccleston, which the randomizer has we've not done a huge amount. We've done Dalek.
Well, there isn't a huge amount of Eccleston. That's the whole thing.
That is true.
You know?
We've done Dalek, we've done The Unquiet Dead. We've done more than our fair share of Eccleston, considering we're really only halfway through. Not even halfway through Doctor Who as a whole. But yeah, Father's Day.
Father's Day, that was good times. And then we went to some trying times. There's always trying times in Doctor Who, but there was like some convoluted plot times that were then stomped all over by one of the most iconic monsters of the series. Yes, the Cybermen returned to pull to open in full force in Earthshock.
That's right, and we destroyed them. We destroyed them at once.
It was excellent.
Or venerated them. It was absolutely excellent. But it's interesting, we went from Father's Day to, you could call it Bad Father's Day, in terms of the Doctor's fatherly relationship with Adric. Hashtag RIP, hashtag never forget. Rose learns that her dad must die, and the Doctor learns that he's got to kill off the annoying kid for maximum emotional impact. Yep. So yeah, Earthshock.
A lot of sacrificing. That was, and then we departed the freighter, found a way to the far future, and at a time where the solar flares had ravaged Earth, but everything was okay. It would actually look like a nice national park because everything had grown back. But of course, other things were back, and that was one of the aliens, the alien in the title of this story, which was the two-parter from Tom Baker's first season, the Sontaran Experiment.
Yes, you might call it a bit of a filler between Ark in Space and Genesis of the Daleks. That's where we went.
Filler episode. Less said about filler episodes, the better. They invite you to sort of headcanon around them to make them fit. You don't really need to. It was just a thing. We were done with it. And we were so done with it, we decided to go back to kind of like the first part almost of the little cycle I was just describing. We're back at Eccleston. Yes. And we're back with some family stuff that has a lot to do with Rose. Yeah, that's right. We're at Series 1, Episodes 4 and 5, Aliens of London and World War III.
Nice. And I like how you say we decided to go back there. It's a bit of a royal we.
Sorry.
With the randomizer there. We're just
a big we
with the randomizer now. We got Stockholm Syndrome here on Pull to Open as the randomizer decides to take
it's a very flat team structure.
It kind of is, yeah. The flatness is we get flattened by the randomizer as it still holds over our heads the threat of doing the Daleks master plan.
Exactly.
The longest story remaining on our docket. Who knows? We might get there by the end of the day. But before we do, we just plunge straight into the poll. That's what we got next, right, Pete?
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to skip over anything else we'd need to do, unless it has to do with torturing you by forcing you to come up with Doctor Who titles that are represented by emojis. That's right. We still need to do the Whomoji challenge.
That's
the only way. It's the only path to the poll. You know, all roads come back to this one.
Okay, all right. One day I'm gonna log into the unit computers to fire a missile straight at the Whomoji challenge and prevent this from happening. But until I remember the password,
I've changed it. I've changed the password.
Oh no!
Always a step ahead of you.
It's not. Buffalo,
let's see if our readers, listeners, viewers, the people who encounter this podcast are also ahead of you, because they are the ones who contribute these emojis. And we've got a new batch, and we've been putting out the call because we needed a reload for 2025, and people have responded. And I am going to make good on a promise we make every time, which is that if you send us a Whomoji, dear listener, via the Apple Podcast app, you go to the front of the line. That is happening right now. Someone has submitted a review. It is actually CT Tig, if you remember CT Tig.
Oh, good old CT Tig.
Yeah.
Thank you, CT Tig.
Great fan of the pod, and comments a lot on videos, and it just is a very faithful listener, giving us a whole bunch of these. So we're going to go through these one by one until we until we run out again, and then we'll get back to the other one. So this is how you get to the front of the line, folks. You submit a review. All right.
I rescind my thank you, CT Tig. Go ahead and talk to me.
So this is we'll start with a light one. This is actually just 2 emojis.
Ha!
Are you ready for this?
I'm ready. I laugh in the face of 2 emoji.
Okay. So the first one is a frog head. And the second emoji is a chair. And that's all you get.
It's
we dropped that in the chat.
Thing. The frog, I was immediately thinking of the Doctor Who comic strip. Remember that the business leader that the 6th Doctor encounters in the comic strip. He's like this frog. With
Vaguely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I know what you're talking about. It is not that.
But it's not that. It's the Jodie Whittaker thing towards the end of her first season. And it's... Was it called It Takes You Away?
It Takes You Away!
Hey!
There it is.
Oh,
Wow.
no.
You were only flummoxed a bit on the actual title. You knew what it was. It was just like, wait a minute, what was that called again?
I didn't know if it was Jodie's first season or second season. I know I haven't seen a few in the second season, and I wondered if this was one of them. But no, yes, it does. It took me away, that particular episode, and who could forget?
But it brought you back. It brought you back eventually.
Yeah,
and thanks. Sorry?
Chair Day, but with frogs. Sorry. Go ahead.
So, no, there's thanks CT Tig for dropping those off. We're going to be working through them for the next little while. We probably won't get to all of them until well after season 2, but we will get to all of them. I guarantee it. Again, the best place for you, listener, to submit these emojis is the Apple Podcasts app, but you can, of course, follow us on social and submit there. We are at Pull to Open or Pull to 63 on most networks, and every single one of these goes into the Pull to Open Codex, which is linked in the show notes and is a complete list of every single Doctor Who story with our reviews, with the Whomojis, and with links to every podcast we've done. So enjoy that.
Indeed, and I believe we also have in there links to the poll, the ongoing poll. Is that right?
Well, it's in yes. It's because the Spotify links for the podcast include the poll. So go to those links. Yes, if you want to vote. That's actually great. We should actually mention that. Go to the Codex to follow the links to every Spotify link, and you will find the poll for that story. Yeah, that's a good note, Chris. We're going to keep that. We're going to keep that up.
You know what? Yes, because normally this is the ghettoized portion of the podcast where I say, "Hey, Spotify list is pulled from the bottom of the screen." That's right, it's Poll to Open. But yeah, now I can say just to everyone, click on that link and go to Spotify. You don't even need to be a Spotify account holder. I believe maybe not, but anyway, go check
I think they might make you log in once.
Okay, you might need to log in, but it's super easy. Anyway, you can vote if you like right now. If you're on Spotify, you can vote on Aliens of London / World War III and what you want your rating to be. We'll explain the ratings at the end of the show. But we got some preliminary results now from Father's Day. This stays open for many, many Father's Days to come. But we have a surprise result, or at least it's a surprise for me, because I rated Father's Day. This was the first of my fixed blank in time ratings, which is, you may remember, for Earthshock, I rated that a fixed banger, Viscount banger in time, the best of the best, but also like has some nostalgia elements. This one I rated a fixed hater in time.
You did.
It had Professor Haterish elements that I thought that Doctor Who learned from, had some mistakes, and timey-wiminess sort of increased after that. You rated it a Viscount banger. You rated it.
I did not think the same way you did. That was a very divergent rating. We were worlds apart on this one.
We were worlds apart, but the worlds enough and time of our audience has decided to go with you, sir. But not by a little, by a massive amount. The Viscount Banger is ahead. It is a clear majority. 54.5% of people have rated Father's Day a Viscount Banger. Following up with the Dalek on 27%, and then Professor H at Fixed Point in Time.
Yeah, well, the banger's basically doubled the Dalek. It's basically, like it's way out ahead. And then some people said Hater, and some people said Fixed Point in Time. So there are a couple people that maybe because you can't do the hybrids, like, if you vote in, although if you made a comment, we would include it. So you got,
Spotify account. Hey,
yeah, there you go. So you had a showing. You had a little showing here on your side. But yeah, like I say, Father's Day really was, in my view, kind of bold. It epitomized a lot of sort of like the risks they were sort of taking in season 1 and trying to do things they'd never done before. And as I concluded in that one, it's required reading, in my view, for Doctor Who. You got to check this out. For NuWho, anyway.
Well, yeah, I'll still disagree on that one, but I'll agree to disagree. I will accept the voting public's decision on this. However, I will say that we have plenty of time for more voting public on this. We have over 1,700 days to go in the poll, so every Father's Day from now on, start in June, and keep remembering every June after that, just remember to vote on Father's Day. Set up a new Spotify account, name it after a different father, and just keep voting, as you can do on all of our polls. But if you want to do more than just vote, what else could they do, Pete?
Well, if you wanted to support the podcast, if you're here on YouTube where you can see us, if you just scroll down below the video, there's a way to give us a super thanks. That's sort of a one-time donation on any video. But of course, you can also become a true companion of the podcast. Go ahead. That's right. You can be not just supportive of one time, you can support us over time. And the privileges you get there is like special emojis you will get to put on the videos or wherever else in the Pull to Open channel, as well as getting the podcast early. And the number of days early is a little in flux right now. And certainly for the hot takes, they're just coming out when we're doing them live. But you also get our eternal thanks and shout outs on the pod. So
in flux, but not in flux. But yeah, go hang around on there. The podcast day early. My goodness, I might actually sign up for that. That sounds cool. Yeah, that would be awesome to watch myself on a Friday rather than a Saturday. That'd be kind of cool. All right, so now it is time to go straight into our commentary.
No, sir. You had to endure the Whomoji challenge. You had to endure the humiliation of me conquering you in our poll. And now you have to have one more indignity thrust upon you, which is, of course, TLDW. Too long didn't watch. Too long Doctor Who. We're going right into that segment. And it is your turn, sir. It is your turn to summarize this story, Aliens of London, World War III, a NuWho two-parter in record time. Of course, we give the person doing this segment 1 minute for every NuWho episode. That's roughly, 45, 48 minutes. And since it's a two-parter, you get a full 2 minutes to summarize this story. How are you feeling about it?
I'm pretty, I don't want to jinx this, but I'm feeling pretty confident. I mean, having just watched this yesterday, I could see how it is. It's kind of slow by in Who terms, right? There's like, there's scenes that kind of slow down as much of a romp as it is. Like, it's not that overstuffed, so I don't see myself.
There aren't too many sets. It's kind of like, I wouldn't say it stretches out. It's just because it's doing a whole bunch of different things. You sort of get a sense that it's maybe longer than it is or shorter than it is. I'm not quite sure, but I know what you mean. It's kind of like, it's all kind of there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
My only problem is if I get sucked into the soap opera side of this, it's I'd be like all about what happened to Mickey in the 1 year. But anyway, let's get to it.
Well, let's try to avoid that rabbit hole in the next 2 minutes, because we're about to start the official Pull to Open summary of Aliens of London and World War III. It begins in 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, so the Doctor returns Rose to the Powell estate, and it says it's just been 12 minutes since she left, and but no, that's not true. It's or 12 days or whatever. It's actually 12 months. She's been on for a year. There are missing posters everywhere, and Jackie slaps the Doctor for taking Rose away for that long, and they're on the roof, and Rose laments that she's the only person who knows that there are aliens up there, and this giant alien ship crashes
30
into
seconds.
the thing. And it turns out that there's actually a pig inside it. Turns out at the mortuary, and it's just this. It's a diversion, but they don't know what's going on. Meanwhile, in Downing Street, the Prime Minister's missing. An MP called Harriet Jones is sort of trying to find him to. She's got a proposal about cottage hospitals. But yeah, who's this guy? This deputy prime minister comes in, and like the temp of the MI5 comes in, and the army guy comes in, General Asquith, and they're all a bit chubby. And
1 minute.
They all turn out to be Slitheen. They're a family of scavengers who have decided to blow up the world, and they take all the alien experts and they try to electrocute them, but the Doctor reverses it. All the Slitheen get electrocuted instead, but they're still alive, and they want to launch a missile with the UN's permission. And they get it, and they're about to launch the missile, but the Doctor and Mickey have hacked into unit computers that let them launch a missile.
Minute 30.
It's great at Downing Street, and that destroys the Slitheen. And but the Doctor, Rose, and Harriet Jones, they're fine because they've hidden from the Slitheen in the cabinet room with its metal barrier, and they escape from that. And the Doctor remembers that he heard Harriet Jones's name. Because she's a prime minister who's going to get elected for 3 terms and have a golden age. And Mickey decides he doesn't want to go on board in the TARDIS, but the Doctor,
Time!
Cool. All right. Yeah, we'll call that a success. You're like about a hair over, but that was fine. I've been a hair over many times. It also seemed like you were kind of, sort of think you were more or less done, and then sort of were just filling in some details anyway. So that was all good. The weirdest trip up at the beginning, I got to say. I understand it because I've been in the hot seat many times. But you first said she's been gone 12 minutes, and then you were like, "Oh no, wait a minute! I'm in 12 days," and you couldn't say like the 12 hours is what it was. You were supposed to bring her back 12 hours.
Okay, that's it. That's the one.
Yeah. But this is why don't we start there? Because I think that is honestly one of the best cold opens in the history of the show, in my view, is Aliens of London, where he kind of comes back. He's all casual and jokey. I'm awesome. I'm the Doctor, and we've just had a lot of adventures. Now you're back home. And then, it's only just 12 hours since you left. Isn't this great? You know, like, isn't this life great? And she's like, oh, yeah, sure. I'll go talk to my mom. And then, boom, we all know it's 12 months later. And they actually show just how, like, the effect of that, like what her being gone has done to her life and the people around her who love her. And the Doctor comes in like, oh, it's sorry, it's not 12 hours, it's 12. Sorry, he says that sorry. It's just perfect, and he's just because it just sort of shows the dimensions of Doctor Who, like being kind of this fun thing, but also it can suddenly turn into this drama and with super high stakes in an instant with these sort of sci-fi stakes. I totally love it every time.
And it's also of a piece with like the fact that this whole season is Doctor Who smashing into a soap opera. Right. That's what RTD has done here. He's going for the biggest audience possible. He's going for those Coronation Street viewers, those EastEnders viewers with the Tyler family. But also, like, that allows us the opportunity to see what happens when the people are left behind, and what happens when the Doctor messes up with the TARDIS and the year or the location, as he so often does, that it can often have this impact. And it's kind of surprising once you see it that we haven't seen it before. Ian and Barbara didn't go back to Coal Hill School with like wanted posters everywhere.
This time watching, I hadn't thought of this before, but this time I actually thought directly about them, because of that final scene in the chase, and they're kind of being laughy and whatever. But it's like they're 2 years out, and they're just kind of like, oh, we better think of something, But and they gloss over it because, of course, it's 60s and whatever, and it's just a goodbye scene. But it's that idea of like, you haven't just been away, like you haven't called, like surely you have family that just wondering where you're at. Like most everybody has family and people who care about them. What state would they be in if you just suddenly disappeared and were gone adventuring in space and time? And this is finally actually sort of shows us that it's pretty awesome. I mean, I think
the moral of the story is always take your passport when a time traveler invites you aboard his machine, and you need a cover story for where you're going. Think about the passport thing first.
Yeah.
In fact, the Doctor should really have a checklist for new companions on like the inside of the TARDIS door. Have you remembered? Bring your passport. Like Donna's prepared. She's got all her luggage. She's probably got her passport somewhere in there when Donna finally boards the TARDIS. But I feel like other companions, like we see Rose stuffing a backpack here, finally, which I guess she hadn't done before.
No, she definitely didn't. And that's what I really like. It sort of comes around at the end where she's kind of forced to actually make the decision. And she even says out loud, last time it was spur of the moment. Now I'm actually signing up. Right. And that's a good little, it's played light, but there's impact to that clearly. And I think the very end, it's one of the, we're kind of beginning at the end here, but it's like, that ending is, to me, really like hauntingly perfect. Like I like when they disappear and she's just told her mom, I could come back in 10 seconds. It's a time machine. Don't you get it? And she waits 10 seconds and then nothing happens. And all she can do is walk away.
Yeah, and it's a brilliant, like we do this in journalism a lot. We talk about the circular thing of the lead and the kicker of a story. The ending references the beginning and it just feels nicely tied up. So definitely it's appropriate for us to talk about the beginning and the end here before we move into the meat of the sandwich, as it were, the Slitheen meat that can sometimes be hard to digest and give you gas. But no, let's talk about that sandwich a little bit more, because I want to talk about that cold open. As you say, we rated it one of the best cold opens. This is also, for me personally, this is the cold open that got me back into Doctor Who. And I often tell this story because I think people forget, like in these days of like easy access to Doctor Who, people forget that here in the US, which is where I was already living at the time in 2005, like nobody picked it up. Nobody picked up the new series of Doctor Who. It was not shown for a year. You had to BitTorrent that stuff.
Wow, you're just saying it out loud again.
That's right. The Randomizer brought to you by BitTorrent.
You had to use other means, is what we euphemized that as in podcast land.
As my sister likes to call it in a Yorkshire accent, the murky web. The murky. You had to go on the murky web to see it. But anyway, I watched Rose. I believe I downloaded.
By the way, I hope your VPN is up to speed now, because the FBI might be on the other end. But anyway, go on.
Yep. Oh boy. No. So I watched Rose and I was like, it's okay. Still a bit burned. And then like a year goes by, I go into a British goods store, which we have a couple of those here in San Francisco. I think we have some in New York as well. Being a British goods store, there's an inflatable Dalek in the court. Like clearly they are Doctor Who fans at a British goods store. So I go in, I get my, crunchies and curly whirlies or whatever. But yes, both accurate British chocolates.
I'm sure someone,
yeah, someone just crunched on their curly whirly while they were eating that. While they were listening to that, sorry. Anyway, the owner calls me over. He's got a laptop and he's like, have you seen the new Doctor Who? And by that point, we're on season 2. We're on Tennant already. And I was like, I just kind of, it didn't seem like my cup of tea. Like I used to watch it as a kid, afraid of being burned. He calls me over. He shows me this cold open. Like, he is so enamored with the cleverness of it, the playfulness of it, that it's such a basic, wonderful time travel trope that they've never done, that is so accessible to the, let's call them the soap opera audience, that is just here for Billy Piper and and the whole Power State thing. And it sets out the stall of the new show so well, and especially Ecclestone's goofy grin of like, "Oops, sorry."
Right? Yeah.
Like that was the moment where I got something I didn't get watching all of Rose. which is that they are playing with how the Doctor messes things up. And suddenly that changed things. Like the fact that they were still kind of making him imperfect. I guess we hadn't really seen that in the Too Slick TV movie, you know.
No, we hadn't.
Yeah,
I would say you're really putting the finger on what makes, I think, this story, this specific episode special. It's really the first time they kind of deliberately deconstructed the show and sort of looked at some of the premise itself of the Doctor sort of doing this crazy adventuring with time travel, and you know what could that mean, and what are some real consequences of that, right? And you know, we'll talk about the Slitheen and all the stuff with Harry Jones and whatever, but really that's the heart of this. You know, it's what is the Doctor's effect on the world and the people around him, and then what does that do to those relationships? It's just really smartly done.
It's really smart. And what happens when you put the Doctor in weird situations? I mean, first of all, let's not ignore the fact, you know, one more thing about that year-long disappearance, which is kind of brushed aside with the alien invasion. Fair enough. You know, it's kind of bigger fish to fry. So I guess it's important that it be shoved aside at some point for plot purposes. But also, like, Mickey, you really feel for Mickey Smith in this. You don't necessarily feel for Noel Clarke, who has, of course, been cancelled and is actually in the middle of a libel trial as we are recording this.
We're not really here to chime in on that, but I will say, I will give him credit for like making us care about Mickey. Like his performance is great in that, like, he takes what was essentially a stock character who was supposed to be this coward, and you know, just turns him into someone who has depth. Again, and that even gets more and more realized the more he's in the series. Yeah. But to actually believably have him be someone who helps out in this adventure, but also, you know, makes him super sympathetic, because of course they blamed him. Like, that's exactly like, this is another thing that RTD is so good at. Like, he sort of plays out in his head clearly as he does the script. Well, how would that go? And they'd sort of look at the boyfriend, of course, and then it would be this thing. One thing I will say, they don't, I don't really understand why Mickey didn't say anything about the Doctor. You know, like, he somehow kept that secret. And I think the whole implication is, well, he's still in love with Rose. Yeah. He wants to make sure that he doesn't, he isn't, I guess, selling out her and what her choice is or whatever. I guess that's the point. But definitely, it's huge. It's
interesting looking at this the first time after Dot and Bubble, because they definitely clearly racial overtones. The police have called him in for questioning 4 times. Right. 4 times. You know, he's happens to be of color. He's, you know, seen as a suspicious character by the police. And the Doctor sort of dismisses that as a domestic thing. Like, he says several times in this, I don't do domestic. And, you know, he takes Rose away with him to the Horsehead Nebula rather than have Jackie's shepherd's pie, which... Poor old Jackie. Shepherd's pie must be really bad. Rose leaves home because of it. Boy. But yeah, Mickey has an arc. Like, so he has this thing, and the Doctor doesn't seem to care, and he deliberately gets his name wrong to wind him up. And it all kind of has overtones of Danny Pink and PE, you know.
For some reason, I liked it here, though. I didn't really get that overtones. Like, I didn't really get much of the racial overtones here. I think the police would kind of do that regardless. But I might be just because of the Mickey and the Eccleston and their dynamic. But he's so clearly trying to just wind him up, and to the point where Rose says so. Yeah, she's just look, he's just doing that. And I also like how it sort of comes around in this one, and in that he sort of says, I'm going to choke on my words here, but I actually need you. And not only that, at the end, when they're actually having a real conversation, he invites him to come, which was really cool. It's like, why don't you come and look after Rose? Like, you should adventure with us.
And then he does him a solid by saying, "Oh, I put my like Mickey doesn't want to go.
Yeah, he chickens out.
For certain reasons, he chickens out, but he doesn't want Rose to know that he chickened out." And the Doctor does him a solid by saying that it was his thing. So, and there's an understanding passes between them. And I love that. Like with Danny Pink, it was really over-egged. It was like this season-long arc. He calls him PE. Clara is not amused, but the Doctor keeps doing it, and it feels rotten. It feels bad. And I compared it in my mind to here, this, and, you know, Ricky, Doctor calling him Ricky. But it's like, you go back and watch it, it is not like he knows Mickey's name, and he uses it when he needs it. He uses it actually pretty early on. He drops the Ricky thing, or drops it, picks it up. Like, he's playful with it.
Yeah.
But the arc as a result, not only does RTD give Mickey an arc with all of that, like he's the guy who saves the day, but also he gives the Doctor an arc. The Doctor learns to like Mickey in World War III, which we haven't really seen that before, and it's so rare for the Doctor to have an arc. Like, a lot of actors will say this about the Doctor: he's a great role, but like, he's not necessarily good for an actor because he's not going anywhere. Like, he doesn't really change, but he does in this. Like, you can get him to change in this. And I think that's of a piece with the other thing that RTD is doing, which is like deliberately sticking the Doctor in situations that he's never been before, like being forced to watch the alien invasion, quote unquote, on TV. Like,
yeah, I love that. Well, it's just a very clever script. I like the bit where Rose is on the rooftop and she's reflecting, I might have to stay, and she's like, I have all these secrets, I've seen all these amazing alien things, and I can't tell anyone. I'm the only person. And then suddenly the ship flies in and crashes. It's just like, oh, all right, well,
she has that
not so much.
You've got to be kidding me. And you might not like, but everyone gets that, right? It might seem like you need more than that. Like, oh, you got to be kidding me. Now I'm not special, right? But we get it. Like, we are in Rosa's shoes. The success of the first season is all about the extent to which we are in Rosa's shoes. And we all get it. Like, we would want to come back. And I believe companions have said this before, right? When leaving the Doctor, they're like, how am I supposed to go back to ordinary life? Like, this was a thing in the classic series of companions would just be like, I can't go. Or I've got to hide the knowledge of alien existence. But here, it's like, it is playing with that trope as well. It's like, yeah, you knew 5 minutes before everyone else, and no one's going to care.
Yeah, I mean, this is sort of the genius of this script is it's, like I say, it's sort of deconstructing Doctor Who and then sort of figuring out how far out of the old box it can go, you know, and it turns out a lot, like really far. Like, even that line in the first act when, you know, Jackie's yelling at her, like, where have you been, and all this stuff, and the policeman's there, and he goes like, well, I took Rose as my companion, and he's like, is this a sexual thing? Which, yes, I mean, not that yes it is at this point, it's just like, yes, someone finally said it, you know, and it's kind of like everyone, it's been this thing in the background of the show really ever since almost the beginning, in that, does he have a sexuality? What's going on? It's obviously wasn't even touched. It wasn't even talked about in the classic series, really. And now it's like, finally someone's asking the question, which is one of the key steps in like opening that door, which of course they would push further and further and further over the next couple of seasons. Yes. And it's just with one line, it sort of modernizes it, the whole series, really, really quickly.
Yes.
Super smart.
Absolutely right, and it is sort of, you know, it's nice to have Billie Piper once again show up acting chops in response to that line, and sort of giving no, we're not together. But there's something in the way she says that, like, really, really,
yeah, she's got it in her head. It's still in the back of her head at this point. I mean, you really see the evolution here once you sort of zoom out, because even at the end, she invites Mickey, right? After the Doctor does. She's like, you should come with us. And they're still clearly kind of boyfriend, girlfriend, even though she's 19. She's still figuring things out. She's not quite sure where her heart's going. And you contrast that with School Reunion, which we've done earlier on in the podcast, but where Mickey sort of invites himself along, and she's not thrilled about it at that point. You know, it's very clearly, she's just here with my new guy now, but I guess you can come, old boyfriend dude.
Well, I guess it's the difference with going out with Chris Eccleston. You're like, sure, come along. Going out with David Tennant, hands off, stay away.
Well, it's funny, like, you know, this is sort of the randomizer connection, the obvious one anyway, a little bit, in that they show in Father's Day in my view, and I said this in the podcast, that's really when they start to fall for each other, in my view, that they had such a deep experience and really understand each other on another level. And then, of course, everything that happens subsequently with parting the ways, and then he regenerates into Tennant, and then making another decision to go with this doctor. So all of that happens along the way. Again, we're not here to talk about all of that, but it is sort of fun to look back at this version of Rose, where she was still just figuring things out and still loved her family and still loved Mickey even on some level, like not necessarily as her long-term boyfriend, but was like, yeah, he was special to me. And so, it's all kind of here.
So much starts here. We should also mention, like, this is the first time you really see the Bad Wolf season arc. You see it being daubed onto the side of a TARDIS by a kid who's a vandal and is forced by the Doctor to paint over it, even though the Bad Wolf graffiti disappears when he takes the TARDIS inside the closet in the hospital. But that's, continuity.
It was just sort of there in midair. It was in a time envelope or something.
I mean, if any graffiti could do it, it would be Bad Wolf graffiti. But like that's the first real season arc. And I mean, unless you can't key to time or whatever. Or Trial of a Time Lord,
I guess. It's kind of an arc,
but it's not even like, and it's not.
Well, it's the first modern season arc, if you think about it, right? Like the way they just do things in Buffy, and RTD has been very public about saying Buffy was partly an inspiration for this in terms of just the season-long formatting of having this sort of big bad build up throughout, and then unlocking that in the final episode.
Which is just genius, and he shows that he can pull it off here. Like, this Bad Wolf is clearly something we're supposed to pay attention to. So great, it's you're in the hands of a master storyteller here. Which, looking back, you can see we were with Rose, but like, here's where the rubber really hits the road. In that, and not just the intentional season arc, but the unintentional multi-season arc of Torchwood.
Right,
with the appearance of Dr. Sato.
Right.
In the who's the one in charge of the pig and who's looking great in heels.
She is, but I mean, is that supposed to be the same character?
Yes,
I don't know.
It's later explained in Torchwood that she was actually filling in for who's the dude in Torchwood.
Right, yeah.
Yeah,
that guy. Good. That guy, yeah. It totally makes sense. Yeah, it is interesting. So I guess they sort of kick that off here. I feel like I don't get the vibes of her character from this one, and why would you, right? She's just kind of in here as filler guest cast. So, and you sort of backfill the connections. But I do like the whole idea.
Is what Doctor Who would do going forward, and is about to do with season 2, right?
Well, here's the thing. Like, I got to. This is actually a good point to sort of transition to the alien invasion and all the Slitheen stuff, because on top of all these interesting things he's doing with the show itself and the Doctor and his companion relationships, he puts in this plot that is really smart in terms of an alien invasion plot, not one we've really seen before in Doctor Who, where someone says aliens faking aliens. Like, what's with that? And so, like. I always like these sort of layered things. We had seen prior to this in the X-Files, for example, an episode with, Roswell aliens kidnapping people from a car, and then they're abducted by some other alien. There was like a lot of this kind of, almost Inception-like plotting that was kind of starting to become in vogue at the time. So he sort of went ahead and did that, which was kind of neat. Plus, he does. I don't know if this is a trope or just something he thought was interesting. Like, they declare themselves they're the Slitheen, and then it's like, oh, that's actually not our race. It's our name. It's just kind of a funny thing to do. And this is ultimately what one of many jokes in what I think is a fairly successful comedy. Like, it very quickly turns into this thing where, I think Harriet Jones is one of the better pieces of comic relief in this. And then there are things that maybe don't work so well, right? Which is the actual Slitheen themselves, where they just become sort of these portly people in skin suits that are releasing gas and from exchange. And it's basically an excuse to have them farting all the time.
Yes, which is more in the mode of Doctor Who than you might think. Like, a lot of people complained about it at the time.
They still complain about it.
A lot of people still complain about it without remembering that Bob Holmes was the first purveyor of fart jokes in Doctor Who, and we've been to the Time Warrior, right? Where like the joke about the stink bomb, that the Doctor makes, like, the smell of it coming back, and
right. But this literally does the thing. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of farting, and it's kind of funny. Like, it's never really funny. You know what I mean? Like, in the same way where if you put a fart noise over a dramatic scene in some movie, like Jimmy Fallon, I think, did this once with Dracula and Gary Oldman or something. And it is really funny. And they seem to sort of want to do that joke. And they have these farting aliens when there's like high stakes stuff about invasions or whatever. And you're not quite getting it, right? There isn't that sort of fourth wall aspect to it that would actually make it funny. It's just kind of like, oh, weird. And then you kind of realize they're aliens, and it's just this telltale thing. And then they keep doing it because they've established it. They kind of have to do it, but it's, even if it was funny before, it stops being funny pretty quickly. So I kind of get the criticism, even though I do think it's overwrought. I think people say that it totally ruins the episode, which it doesn't. It's just one of the aspects of a sci-fi action comedy that worked better on paper, probably.
Yeah. And the gas exchange, I mean, you can see where it came from, the gas exchange concept. Like, it all comes from this idea of like, why when a guy takes off his rubber mask, reveals himself not to be human in the classic series, like, it's weird because he's like larger on the inside,
right,
as it were. So that clearly that came from that thinking. But I got to say, I'll say one more thing about the farting before I want to get into the skin suits. Because Victory should be naked. Which is a
get out of the skin suits, you mean?
Get out of my skin. Yes, Victory should be naked, Pete. At this point, I was thinking, should I remove my clothing? But no, Victory should not be naked when it comes to Pull to Open. But I do want to say one thing about the farting, which is that I think we understand as Doctor Who fans, like, that there was a real invasion going on here, an alien invasion, as it were. The alien invasion being Doctor Who is trying to reestablish itself on the BBC. It's trying to overcome its legacy. It's going for the biggest audience possible, right? It is trying to invade the brains of the biggest audience possible. And when you're doing that, you've got to bring in the kids. You've got to bring in the young kids who are going to think the fart jokes are screamingly hilarious. So I think that there's this understanding on the part of Doctor Who fans who are watching Aliens in London World War III. We need this. Like, it's just cover your ears if you don't like the fart bits. We're bringing the kids in so that in 10 years, 20 years time, they'll be doing Doctor Who podcasts.
I'm sure I totally agree. Yeah, there is that. So in other words, I think there's a functional audience element to it as well, and I certainly appreciate that.
And they certainly did. It had the audience appreciation index, the AI score, as they used to call it, before that was something else entirely. This was one of the highest ones for the first season. So audiences love fart jokes.
Right. And it's kind of like, I don't know if they'd even do this today, because I like the sort of almost politically incorrect thing of simply casting people because they're fat. Basically they're big people. And so I love the joke. I mean, there's so many kind of good jokes here where there's these randos in government and associations or whatever. Like, I remember the reporter outside somehow recognized someone from a boating association from the North Sea or whatever. And it's like, oh, what a weird group of people to be coming in here. And I just thought that was really funny, where they're all these strange folks. Although there's like one line about the prime minister. The prime minister's dead in the closet. We know that. But like the actual person in the cabinet who should be prime minister now is like caught in traffic or something. Like, I think they understand. Oh, with the city gridlocked, the cabinet can't get here. So you, sir, portly person, are... Yeah,
Joseph Green is right. Who's a very low-level minister. The very low-level minister who's, I don't know if you caught the joke, he's supposed to be looking into sugar exports. Like, that's his brief.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a comment on he's been looking into sugar exports, if you know what I mean. He's been looking into them rather a bit too frequently. But anyway, yes. Well, RTD, at the time, it was kind of interesting what RTD said about this, which, there was some concern in the production team, I believe, that like fat kids on the playground would be bullied as a result of this. But he pointed out something that's interesting, I'd actually go along with, which is that, no, this actually gives them a role to play in the Doctor Who games on the playground. Like, they now actually get some agency instead of just being shunned from the games as the fat unpopular kids might be otherwise. Now they're center stage. Now they get to be the Slitheen. They get to be the Doctor Who villains.
Stick a zipper on their forehead, which sort of comes and goes depending on the scene.
Yeah, only some of them have the zipper. And thank you for segueing perfectly into my only problem with the Slitheen, apart from the fact that I think they're wearing a thong. They're wearing thongs. And it's very skillful that they avoid seeing that. But Victory is not entirely naked, is it? Or the fact that they have really giant arms. It kind of looks like Trogdor from...
Well, they sort of go between practical effects and CGI, and it's not entirely successful. I mean, again, this is 2005 CGI. We have to be forgiving. And again, at the time, we were just, holy cow, the Doctor Who has CGI? It was just insane. But they do sort of transition. They have these transition scenes where the aliens are running through Downing Street, and they're running across corridors. And it's so clear when they're CGI, but they're also they do that thing of like, oh, they're going so fast. Yeah. How could they not catch the Doctor or Rose and Harriet as they're going from room to room?
They just slow down as they approach. Yeah, it's obviously this is the first attempt to take practical effects CGI and back. Also happens with the Big Bang Ben destruction of the alien ship. That's a practical effect cut to CGI of ship going sploosh Thames. So yeah, it's a bit Scooby-Doo, but really, like, you can buy it. Like, whatever, you buy it. The bit that I can't buy is how damn long it takes when they open their foreheads. Like, it's just a bit too much. Like the light that appears. First of all, we like in our post-Moffat era, we read that as like, oh, is it a crack in space and time appearing in their heads? What's going on here? But then there's like a 5-minute dance party as the whole room fills with black light, with ultraviolet light, which is, commonly used at raves and discos. And it just appears as the, like, every single time it takes too long. And where's the black light coming from? Like, so that is the thing that stands out to me.
I'll buy the black light just because of like the whole high tech aspect to it, but I will totally agree. Like, by the third or fourth time, you're just like, oh, come on! Like, you're just let's get it over with. And they're obviously trying to do something dramatic when they need it to be, and have it be really, really quick when they don't. So, like, when the Doctor turns the tables on them, and they're all getting electrocuted, like he kind of gets his skin back on super, super fast, just because he needs to for the story there. And it's a bit of a stretch. Again, I think that it's enough of a romp. The pace is fast enough. You don't quite notice it. You kind of do by again, deep into the second episode, just like the cop there chasing Jackie. You're just, okay, dude, come on. But I will say, like... Yeah.
To your point earlier, I didn't want to go too far without reiterating the fact that they kill off Tony Blair. Literally, literal Prime Minister Tony Blair. It is supposed to be him, to be confirmed as him. Like, if you look at the pictures of the Prime Minister on the staircase, the last one is John Major, the Prime Minister before Tony Blair. Like, there's no one else it could be. And he's just stuffed in a cupboard and forgotten. His assistant gets more of a eulogy from the Doctor than Tony Blair does. And it's like, if you had a problem with Let's Kill Hitler and the way Hitler's sort of forgotten in that and stuffed in a cupboard, like, it happens with Tony Blair first. Like, they've really set out their stall in the new series.
Well, unless you're going to make your world leader a character, I think that's fine. Like, but like the contrast would be Day of the Moon, Possible Astronaut, when they actually make Nixon a character in the story, which is kind of cool. And I do question whether it's actually Blair. I like that it's vague. I like that it's that he doesn't quite look like him anyway, the body that falls out. And that's one of the reasons they kept it more vague. But I love the line where they sort of get away with not saying who it is, where he's like, hey, who is prime minister now anyway? And she's like, how would I know? I've been gone a year. And it's like, she doesn't even say who the last one was, it's like, it's because even though that's probably what you would say, it's
yes.
But I like it's just enough that it's like, oh, cool. We could still be in sort of the alternate universe of Doctor Who where we don't, because once you make it too much the real world, it's almost like an uncanny valley situation where you're like, wait a minute, like, but we don't have aliens and stuff. You start to think too hard about the disconnects, like the thing that don't work, like one of the other things in Doctor Who universe, for example, which they sort of reconcile here is sort of having a powerful UN. And that they sort of mention here, oh, Britain has this agreement with the UN and they can just sort of get the nuclear codes if they make the right phone calls or whatever. And they allude to stuff that had happened in the past with, and what you could, pick your crisis from the classic series that they could be thinking about, whether it's Robot, whether it's, what was the one we did? Battlefield. Yep. Where there was the nuke and stuff. So, all of that kind of makes sense in the Doctor Who universe. But if you make it a little too much like our universe, you start to sort of, things sort of break down all over the place. And you're thinking again, which you never should be thinking like, why didn't we have Z-bombs in 1986 when the Cybermen invaded Antarctica, right? You just got to like put, edit. You got to do this creative editing. So I like that. By the way, I did talk about the cliffhanger briefly. I will say, like, it's fun to go back and see the show figuring itself out. It's the very first cliffhanger episode, and they kind of didn't know how to do this back then, right? Because you see them resolve the cliffhanger in the cold open for the next episode, which they did a couple of times this season. They did it similarly in Dr. Dance's Empty Child. And then they kind of smartly went to, oh, you know what? All we need to do is a recap, and then that's kind of the cold open, and then the cliffhanger can be resolved after the credits, and which I think is the better choice. But it is kind of neat to see these sort of mini resolutions, like Ecclestone. And I gotta say, it's a good line by Ecclestone where he like pulls off his electrocuting badge. It's like deadly to humans, maybe, and then that's his whole turning the tables of him. It's like, oh yeah, that's so cool. Too bad you couldn't save everybody, Doctor. All the other alien experts are dead. And
it's a good point to bring up the first of like unit is mentioned. Given its United Nations Intelligence Task Force title for I believe the last time, because I think the UN complained after this. So it's still called unit, but nobody mentions what the UN stands for anymore.
Right. Right.
So poor old UN. But yeah, the alien experts that are brought in, you're a bit like, who are these people? Why is Patrick Moore not there? I love that he gets mentioned.
It almost, you think like Sarah Jane should be one of them, right? Like this is the thing. Like it should be all the Doctor's ex-companions. Honestly, it should be the people who are in this group. Luckily that they weren't, because they all had to be like killed. But it's like, who else is like an expert in aliens here? I mean, I guess Jack Harkness.
They should all be thrown out of that room because they're not clustering around the Doctor. They should recognize the Doctor if they're alien experts.
Right.
And be like, oh, hey, oh, it's you. Oh, my God, it's the 9th incarnation. Oh, my God. Wait, 9th or 10th? Are we counting the War Doctor? What's going on? They should be saying as they're fighting for his autograph. Instead, he's just like sitting there in the back like he's some other expert.
So we haven't talked too much about Harriet Jones until now, and I want to give her due, because I like Harriet Jones. I mean, she's instantly likable because of her, her doggedness, and she just wants to do right by her constituents, and she's kind of the MP and the politician that we all want, in terms of our representatives. And I do think her manner and the way she's written works really well as sort of this comedic foil to, the Doctor and Rose. And there's one or two jokes that fall a little flat, like the pass it to the left first thing.
The port. So the Doctor, this gets us into a regular segment of how much of a drinker is the Doctor. Because Rose actually for the first time says it. I mean, this is the first time when Jackie asks, does the Doctor drink? Rose says, she prevaricates on the question, but she says yes. And we've gone through so much of Pull to Open, wondering, is the Doctor a drinker? He was clearly a bit of a Larchen as Pertwee incarnation, clearly a bit on the wagon as Hartnell. But no, this is it. Like he's got a glass of port with everyone else, although we never actually see him drink it. But he knows how to triple. He claims to know how to triple the inflammability of the port, which would basically
not triple, triplicate.
Oh, triplicate. Yes, that's how we know it's technobabble and supposed to be within the show, right? But like, what would that do? Triple the amount of alcohol in it, basically, to make it that much more flammable. So the Doctor likes his port strong, I think we could say. But then they're drinking it throughout in the cabinet room, which is kind of cool.
That's true. Yeah. She
passes the port to the left. But yes.
Well, I do think the later scene where they're trying to work out what kills the Slitheen is one of the better scenes in this whole two-parter, partly because it has Harriet Jones being kind of funny with, saying fart and not really liking that she's saying the word. And so she has to sort of qualify it every time she says it. That's funny. But I think it's such a good just scene, like where he's like, I need to think, help me think, and they start out by saying sort of almost dumb observations. They're green, but then it gets their brains going, and they start thinking about really sort of distinctive things. Wait, they hunt like a ritual. Wait, the smell, all of this, and sort of helps him, narrows it down, and he sort of figures it out. And this is such a smart thing because it's not just Doctor Who is science. It's like Doctor Who is that's almost the scientific process, right? Like that's I think the thing to sort of take away from this, which is a great lesson for any kids watching. I got to say, like, you got to use the thing up here and then, but you got to use it with your friends and in a smart sort of deductive way. And you can almost do anything, and boom, he does.
Use the little grey cells. Exactly. It's Doctor Who as Sherlock, but not in the Moffat-y Sherlock way. Because the Moffat-y Sherlock way is like Sherlock's so smart, like you don't even try. He's noticed 10,000 things already. But this is the Doctor calling on help. Using his friends, narrowing it and encouraging them. The way he says narrow it down, like that's not something you could imagine Capaldi's Doctor doing, for example. He'd be like, oh yeah, the green, yeah, oh there, that really narrows it down, But Eccles is like, yeah, come on, more, yes, brainstorming, no bad ideas, go.
Yeah, love it. And I love it that just, the high stakes that the whole moment gives it with, obviously Jackie being in danger and all that. One more thing on that too, because like, obviously one of the key things here is like, because of the history, Jackie and Mickey are not, don't like each other at the beginning of this episode. And then they come together, obviously, by the end. And I really, really love the line where they've just had this sort of exchange where Jackie wants the Doctor to promise that Rose is going to be okay. He doesn't give her an answer. And then they go to the hacking into the defense systems. And there's a moment where she goes, I could stop you. And he goes, but the cool thing about Mickey is like, he kind of wants her to, the way he delivers that line, do it then. He doesn't say it in a way that's like angry or, you're a coward for not doing it. He kind of like, do it. Like I'm willing for you to do that because I don't want to kill Rose. He's basically is like, and she doesn't do it because they all know they have to do it. And it's like, oh, such a good scene.
Yeah, and they have that complicated relationship because the poison pen letters. Yeah, it's really dramatically interesting, that scene. But I wanted to go back to Harriet Jones for two reasons. First of all, to say that this is Doctor Who setting out its stall as we can do present day politics. Right? Not just killing off Tony Blair, mentioning weapons of mass destruction, and even to the point of like, why is Harriet Jones in there in the first place? I think I wasted a second or two in the TLDW explaining this, but yeah, she's got a proposal on cottage hospitals, which is very much in line with what the government was talking about at the time, with how it was going to modernize the NHS. So. Like but she's actually got a good proposal that is going to prevent the NHS from being run too much like a business for these cottage hospitals, which is great. So everyone's instantly on her side. By the way, there was an election during, an election was called when this was out, and the Doctor proved that he is not able to unseat prime ministers with just a few words. You could sort of imagine him going around to Tony Blair's aides going, "Doesn't he look dead?" But no, he doesn't. He doesn't do that. He can't do that because Tony Blair won a third election victory. Once again, taking us back to Father's Day and Thatcher getting no third term for Thatcher, but she did get one.
Well, I gotta say, it took like the new series to actually go to Downing Street, right?
Yeah.
Like this was like the thing. It's almost like even though it's the first series, it's like it's about time the Doctor like actually met the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
Whoever it is, like in this case, it's they're dead, but like it's like the dude, and
also
it's like
he met Mr. Chicken, who was seriously. We'll get into the history corner in a second, but I will just say Mr. Chicken was real. He was the original owner of Downing Street.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
But just like we keep hearing about the Prime Minister over and over again, certainly back in the Pertwee days, but even in Baker and others, and it's like. Yeah, let's finally just go there and have the Doctor, like full on interact with the British government. It's like, okay, let's see what that's like. Like a lot of firsts in this two-parter.
And that actually came from Love Actually. It was actually inspired by the Richard Curtis film Love Actually, and specifically the Girls Aloud video of Jump that went along with it. Where Girls Aloud, this girl band, this mediocre British girl band at the time, break into Downing Street and interact with the scenes in the film that are in Downing Street. Hugh Grant's dancing around, and so it was Russell T Davies watches that, and like any true Doctor Who fan, he watches a completely unrelated video of girls dancing around and says, "You know what? Doctor Who needs to go to Downing Street." And he does, and he takes it there, and it's brilliant. You get inspiration from anywhere. But to go back to Harriet Jones, let's have the jingle, Pete, because it's time.
Oh, is it time for Pull to Open History Corner?
Yes, it is. As that jingle just told you, it is time for the History Corner, because Harriet Jones, when they're narrowing down which the alien is, and the Doctor's figuring out how to defeat it. By the way, it is just miraculous that Mickey is like just such a true bloke who has got a true British bloke will always have a cupboard full of pickled items. Like my dad did. Just pickled onions and lots of pickled in vinegar stuff. But anyway, she mentions a little bit of history, which is that Hannibal used the Carthaginian, great Carthaginian general who attacked Rome successfully over the Alps, used vinegar to dissolve the rocks. Now,
right.
We don't know if that's actually true, but it is from a fairly contemporary source, which is Livy, the Roman historian. So he thought it was real. But yeah, the idea is that the army would use vinegar and fire, the combination of the two, on the rocks. So you kind of do need a little bit more.
I would think you need a little bit of force too. Like you probably weaken it and then smash it down a little bit rather than just having the acid just completely consume it. Or
yes, well, the idea is that he ordered great branches to be wedged between the rocks that blocked the way, and then the branches were burned. Then you pour vinegar over the rocks. That makes them soft enough to be broken, allegedly. So if you're stuck in a rockfall and you are Mickey Smith and you have a ton of pickled items, that's how you can break out of that rock. So yeah, wise words from Harriet Jones and from history there, and from Hannibal.
All right. Wow. Well, that's answering some questions I had about the destruction of those rocks that I didn't know I had. But now we're going to answer some other questions. And those are, of course, the 4 questions to Doomsday. First question. Why did the randomizer take us here? All right.
Yeah.
Well, the randomizer is showing us in recent episodes that aliens are pretty obsessed with Earth. And we know this because we're Doctor Who watchers. But I think it's like looking at all these invasions that we've recently done. So I recently did Earthshock. We recently did the Sontaran experiment. This is kind of giving Earthshock a run for run for its money in terms of like convoluted plan.
Yeah,
But also like the ratio of convoluted plan to the actual goal, because we haven't said much about what the Slitheen actually want to do, which is they want to have basically Earth nuke itself so that it turns into molten slag that they can sell off to the highest bidder, because somehow that's fuel for spaceships, especially cheap spaceships. They seem really obsessed with the cheap spaceship fuel market. So
you got to hammer the whole world looks like nails, and that's clearly, that's the business they're in. They're not thinking about, we can sell off the great wonders of the world, we can sell off all the treasures, the art, the gold. No, melt the whole thing down.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a bit like very simple goal, and they have this really like 4D chess plan to invade with this pig alien and this ship crashing into Big Ben and then taking over these various positions that can then go to Downing Street, where they can strip naked on the second floor and wait for the red phone to ring, And so it's like,
and how
okay,
do
I
they pick
guess
up that phone with their Slitheen claws. That's what I want to know.
Yeah, so like you look at Earthshock, and the Cybermen's plan looks a bit like straightforward when you think about it, when you compare the two. So that's what I thought the connection was there.
Seriously, and you didn't even need that whole convoluted thing where Britain now requires the UN to launch its nuclear weapons like that. That's an invention, and there's just no point in it. It's just for a dramatic clock ticking thing,
right?
I guess to have.
Yeah, you needed clock ticking because the missiles coming in or whatever. Yeah. And I think it kind of works. Like I say, I think it kind of works with what we've established with Great Britain of the Doctor Who universe, and I think it's just enough.
It's a bit more
to get you not to think too much about how weird and different that is from the real world, because you don't really know how these things work in the real world.
Yes, and you also don't want Joseph Green, aka whatever his Slitheen name is, to just be able to press a big red button all by himself. You do need some tension. So I understand why they did it. But in terms of why did the Randomizer bring us here? Yes, it's thinking about monsters and their convoluted plots. That's the Earthshock connection. It's thinking about monsters being a bit rubbish sometimes, which is, I think, the connection from the Sontaran experiment, and also like a really terrible evil plot that came from the Sontaran experiment, which is we're going to hold off the invasion until these random experiments are completed. Also, the Randomizer does sometimes pay attention to real world events, which is why I'm just a little bit worried that it chose this month for World War III.
Okay.
So yeah,
right, yeah. Well, we don't get political at all in this podcast.
If you're listening to this podcast now, remember that the irradiated rocks around you can be sold to passing aliens for fueling their spaceships. So
yes,
silver lining.
Especially cheap ones. I don't get that. It's a weird thing. Okay, so this is going to factor in even more in the second question, which is, what if the evil plot had succeeded?
Okay, so we always like to go back to the last moment, right, before the thing that stopped the evil plot, and which in this case is the missile.
Right.
Which is possibly the biggest hole in all of this, and may come into play in the next question, is the fact that you can just log into Unit with your dial-up modem from your council flat, and with one word, Buffalo, you can log in. I mean, the IT, the cybersecurity of Unit is simply shocking. Who they got in there? Doge?
I actually think that it's funny. It doesn't make sense, but it's like in keeping with the comedic nature of this episode. It's a neat little subtle joke that the IT is bad, and like you could picture some IT guy in the British Parliament, like, okay, we need to just make it super simple for General Carrington here or whatever. He just wants it all Buffalo all the way. Let's make it all Buffalo all the way down, just keep the same password. And they just kind of do the worst thing you could do and just have the same password for everything because of some general who can't check his email.
Yeah, Buffalo. It's easy to remember. Like soldier, right? Buffalo soldier. You remember? Oh yeah. Unit's full of soldiers. Hey, I remember the password. But anyway, so let's say that Unit changed its password and the Doctor doesn't know it anymore. And then they do actually get to launch all the missiles.
Right.
Which is now you've got to also suppose that the crews of the submarines, which is I think the only way that Britain can launch nuclear missiles is submarines,
right,
would also have something to say about this. Like, wait, we've got, because you would have to use Britain's entire nuclear arsenal, not do what you said you were going to do, which is just nuke the spaceship, this invisible spaceship above you, but nuke the whole planet, right?
Right, but I think it's sort of I think you could still do it. So, like, I mean, again, where are you going with this? I think they could still do it simply because the crews wouldn't know which what the coordinate is. They'd just be told to do this coordinate thing, and maybe some of them would understand that it's not quite where they said they were. But I think most would just put in the numbers and have them fire it off. And I think the point is that they didn't necessarily shoot all the nukes. It's that because the nukes start landing on various cities, those people do a first strike, and there's basically a massive global thermonuclear war.
Right,
automated systems, and it's not like an automated
Doomsday
retaliatory
device.
strike, but there's essentially a mutually assured destruction that happens.
Yes, so this is not History Corner, this is Nightmare Corner. The UK currently has a stockpile of approximately 225 nuclear warheads. 120 are operationally available at any one time on 4 nuclear-powered submarines. So, if Britain launches, you wouldn't even need that sort of the cascading effect. Even if the rest of the planet's like, just watch, you could pretty much blow up Earth with 120 nukes.
Yeah, I mean, you could do irrevocable damage for certainly. So then what happens, right? Like, that's the thing. Like, so whether I sort of thought of that, like, either he can't get the cruise missile, but you'd think then he would figure something else out. I was thinking, like, the last thing that happens is he actually he needs Mickey to make sure the interceptors don't take out the missile. And I was thinking that doesn't work for some reason, because maybe they changed the password at the last second because they noticed someone just launched a missile, and so they can't do that secondary thing. The missile shot down. They get the code, everybody dies. And if everybody dies, though, the Slitheen have said they're going to go to their ship because it's parked outside, essentially. So what the Doctor and Rose can do is possibly do something there on the way as the missiles are getting fired. Like, they can either stow away on the ship or do something else. Like, essentially what I feel like this does is that if the Doctor survives, he becomes even worse than Time Lord Victorious, because now, in addition to the trauma of the Time War, he's lost his favorite planet. And so he and Rose become almost this dark pair, because she ultimately still has to become the bad wolf to create herself. So it becomes this... I haven't fully thought this out, but it is like the Doctor and the Bad Wolf, and they are the new Time Lords almost. But it's a much darker, like, born out of war version of them, which is
with Harriet Jones dark. With Harriet Jones just trailing along behind them, going Scottish Hospital. Oh, they're all gone. But here's what I was going to say about that evil plot succeeding and World War III happening, the world blowing up. Obviously, the Doctor and Rose are going to survive because they're in that they're basically in a bunker,
right?
Which I don't know if that's going to survive a direct nuclear hit, but presumably the Slitheen wouldn't have a direct hit on London, since that's where their ship is. It's in the Thames. You don't want to do that. But who else is going to survive in their extremely deep bunker?
Which Missy?
Well,
who are you talking about?
Is she there at that point? No. Here's what I was thinking.
I don't know.
At this point, okay, so it's a year on from 2005. This is set in 2006, right? But still, you got to imagine that over in Salt Lake City, a certain has a very, very deep bunker with a Dalek in it, which happens the next episode. So what I was thinking was, if the evil plot succeeds here, you still go from World War III to Dalek. It's just much darker. And the Dalek, Van Staten would probably let the Dalek out earlier somehow, as part of his backup plan for what the hell do we do now? Salt Lake City's been nuked, all dead. Everyone, population of Salt Lake City, all dead. And yeah, we just sort of get a darker and perhaps more epic version of Dalek.
Yeah, I suppose it's almost like, who cares about the Dalek? The world's just been nuked, So maybe it just gets out, and it becomes the chief salesman for the spaceship fuel mall, I guess, that the Earth has become.
But he doesn't actually. No one ever actually gets away. They drive in, but they don't drive out. Like they come in the Dalek's dressed up, like he's got a cap on. He's like your garage attendant. He's like, "Fill you up, sir."
Yeah,
there
you go. Sounds very Dalek-y.
Yeah, and then he just exterminates them when they get out.
I mean, it was a very crafty Dalek in that episode. He was really in tune with feelings.
So, so the Earth doesn't actually get sold off. It just the Dalek exterminates everyone at a pretend gas station.
All right. We're moving on to the third question.
There it is.
Which is, where is the Clara Splinter? Clara Oswald, of course, splintered in time at the end of The Name of the Doctor. She's somewhere in every single Doctor Who story. Where is she in Aliens of London in World War III?
Well, she's got a lot to do. I think there may be multiple Clara Splinters in this. One of which, of course, is she's head of IT security for unit.com. Which, do we ever actually see the URL that Mickey's typing in there?
I doubt it was high enough resolution. I don't think they did this series in HD.
Is it
maybe that's
unit.org? Unit.un.org. No, it's unit.com or something perhaps a little more complicated. But yes, she's got to keep the password as Buffalo for this whole plot to work, right?
Right. Yeah, that definitely needs to be there. I actually thought she could even be the reporter for the Evening Standard that declares the whole thing a hoax. And she goes with that angle. So that's at the end, it all comes back around to, this is the standard reset that they used to do up until the Christmas invasion, which is fun. It's funny, like RTD decided to send up and reverse a lot of these tropes, except that one. It was just kind of like, we're still going to do this. Of course, he would end up doing that one, but he didn't cram it in this one, which was kind of nice. And they just kind of like do that thing of like more explain what always used to happen in the classic series, which they've done before. They actually sort of had a meta moment with the Doctor and Ace in, I think it was Remembrance of the Daleks or something, where he talked about how, people would just cover up stuff all the time and mention some old episodes.
Yeah, they are prepared to. He has that great line at the end of this about how people don't believe what's right in front of their face, but if it's invisible, oh yeah, they totally believe it.
Right.
I think maybe one of the best iterations of that. But yeah, Clara's got a lot to do. She's got to be working for Unit or whoever's bringing the Doctor in when they exit the TARDIS, because she's got to say "Don't fire" when Mickey runs and hides. She's distract the troops somehow. I think also, like we decided that Clara Splinters don't like work for evil, but she does somehow have to delay the entire cabinet from getting to Downing Street as well. Because if they make it to Downing Street, they might get blown up.
Right.
So it's probably not a good idea that they do that. So maybe she's holding all the members of the cabinet at a distance, or she's just like, or she might actually be Harriet Jones's assistant, telling her to go to Downing Street at this particular time.
Oh, but she's such a backbencher. She wouldn't have an assistant, do you think, right? Like, she's just all a one-man show. No, but what you said about the unit stuff, and I actually got to thinking, like, oh, maybe she's actually either the civilian authority over the troops or a commander that has really hammered into these guys' heads about shoot-to-kill orders, where they're very cautious about them, because the soldiers at one point are ordered to kill the Doctor right then and there when he's in front of the lift. And everyone sort of gives him a second to chat and jump in the lift, which is it's a great little joke. It's a neat little moment. And they do the thing with the sonic screwdriver to make it so at least semi-believable that he could close the door so fast that they couldn't do anything. But it is still like, well, they're all there with rifles. They've just been given a direct order to shoot and they don't. And you have to think like, okay, what are they thinking? Well, I don't want to do it. Like this guy's unarmed, or like, like in other words, like everyone's sort of going over in their heads, am I actually going to do this? And so I think she got them in that state of like, if you're actually going to kill someone, make sure you are lawfully doing it. And so they're all sort of considering themselves for a few seconds to give them the chance to escape.
And that would also actually explain why they don't shoot the Doctor the first time. The soldiers don't shoot the Doctor the first time they see him in the hospital, when he just yells Defense Plan Delta.
Right.
And then they all suddenly fall in line behind him. I like to think that the Doctor doesn't know what he's talking about. He's pulling something out of thin air, but the Clara Splinter knows, and she's spent like weeks briefing them on Defense Plan Delta. What this means is a bloke in a leather jacket's going to show up. And I
love it. Yeah.
Whatever nonsense he burbles, just go with it, right? Just follow him. He's
awesome.
a natural leader. You'll find it so easy.
All right. Well, that naturally leads into the next question, which is the final question, the ultimate question, but not before I tell you all about our newsletter, which is at pulltoopen.net, where we give full notes on every random story we talk about. There's always a few things we don't get to, so there's fresh content there. Go check it out and subscribe. You can also support us on Patreon at patreon.com/pulltoopen. Another great way to support the show. All right, and now it is time for the final question, the ultimate question, the only question that matters for Aliens of London and World War III. What did we think of this story? Pull to Open rating system has 7 ratings. There's the Dalek, which we give to a good episode of Doctor Who. There's the Ogron, which we give to an irredeemably bad episode of Doctor Who. There's the Professor Hater, which we give to an episode that at least tried something, but maybe isn't that great. There's the Viscount Banger, which we reserve for the best of the best. The Fixed Point in Time, which is a story that is beyond rating, usually for reasons of nostalgia. There's the Lady Cassandra, which is a paper-thin plot, but hey, at least it looks good. Or the Zarbi, which is a story that is so bad, it's good. Which is it here for Aliens of London and World War III?
I am going to give the randomizer another reason to have brought us here, which of course it would know in reverse, but so, the randomizer being a bit bad wolfish itself, it knows to set these things up. So I think that this is my trio. This is the third in my trilogy of fixed point in time hybrids.
Wow. Look at you.
I think this is a fixed Dalek in time.
Oh, wow.
I think Earthshock was a fixed banger in time. Father's Day was a fixed hater in time. I think this is almost a hater, I was thinking like Dalek hater hybrid. But no, I think this is a solid story. Mostly on the Aliens of London side, a bit less on the World War III side. But, solid story. Doesn't deserve a lot of the hate it got from quote-unquote true fans at the time, or even now. But it's also fixed point in time because it's like they were... Like this was just the first 2-parter of the new season. They were just scrambling to hold stuff together. They learned so much of how to do stuff, which is why it could still be a hater. But I think it's just more a fixed point of time. It's just like this needed to be done. It needed to be a new alien race. I think not something we'd seen before. Like it's hard to imagine Aliens of London World War III any other way now. Because you kind of just, all the practical effects, shading, CGI, you got to just work this out in the arena. That's what they did. It's a fixed point of time, but it's also a Dalek. It's solid.
Nice. Yeah, that's funny. You got a whole family of hybrids. You're like your own little RTD there. You got to get your own soap opera with your hybrids there.
That's right. They all live in a relationship with each other.
Yeah, I mostly agree. I would say that it's sort of wrongly remembered for the Slitheen and like, oh yeah, they're these big farting aliens and they're kind of lame. When in fact this is one of the smartest stories even to date. I mean, we've had more since, but like it's up there in terms of like what it's sort of doing, not just within the story, but with the show itself. And again, this is all new at the time. The show was still figuring itself out. What's the tone? What matters to it? What are the relationships? What's its relationship with the world today? All of this was just sort of, and they were just doing it. They were like, okay, we're not going to be cautious. We're going to throw all this spaghetti in all these different directions. It does walls, floors, ceilings. We're just going to have spaghetti everywhere. And yeah, some of it turned into farting aliens, and that didn't work out so well. But
some of it killed the prime minister, which is unusual spaghetti-based assassination.
So there's been more clever scripts since. There's been more playing with time since. But I got to say, even with all the stuff Moffat's done with sort of time and the girl who waited and all these other things, I don't think anything is quite as surprising or as visceral as that it's been 12 months, sorry. You know, like that was just, it's legendary in the show. So that said, you know, there are definitely things that don't work. And it's very hard to judge some of these series one things that are coming out. So honestly, for me, even though I'm tempted to do a Dalek, I'm not going to do a hybrid because that's more your thing. And I might do another one at some point. But I do think this is, to your point, more fixed point in time than anything else because it's not a Hader, it's not a Cassandra, it's not a Zarbi, certainly. Although some people would argue it is. I think it's a fixed point in time. It's like for NuWho, it surprises me that I even would call a NuWho episode a fixed point in time, but this one I think is it. So I'm basically in agreement with you. I just didn't want to go all the way on the Dalek part of it. It might a fixed point in time, you know, it's got a little plunger in its hand there.
It's good. Just starting to poke out of the forehead.
Right.
There, but it could be a plunger. It could just be a Slitheen whose zip has come open. But yeah, fixed point. You know, I think we're on the same page here with the fixed point in time concept. I think we're absolutely right. Also, by the way, fixed point in time is essentially why the Doctor can't go back at that point, right? And say, so you know, 12 months. Sorry, let's do a Father's Day and just skip back and do this again.
Which again, you're kind of thinking when you're watching it the first time, is he going to? This seems like this is not what he intended. You have a time machine, and he obviously can't because you know, part of events. He's done it. He's already established he's been gone for a year, or Rose has been gone for a year. So there it is. All right. I just want to say Grace really liked this episode. We'd actually seen it recently together. And she always likes coming back to it. I was surprised she sort of was like, oh yeah, I'll watch that again, even though we'd watched it like just a few months ago. I will quote her though. She did say towards the end there where he's on the phone with Rose and the TARDIS, and that he's like, hey, I'm ditching dinner because I don't do domestic. You should come with me and leave your mom. She thought he was being a meanie.
He was.
Yeah.
I mean, at least stick around for the shepherd's pie. Or, you know, leave a note to yourself in 2 regenerations' time next to the note about patching the phone back through the TARDIS console.
Yeah, but I like that she reacted to that particular line as opposed to some of the sort of playful stuff he was doing with Mickey earlier or whatever. Like, she recognized correctly that that's kind of a meaner thing to do, to just ditch someone and say, nah, I don't want to hang out with you. But I want to sort of benefit from what I want from this relationship or whatever. It was like, that's right. That's not being very nice. And that was kind of one of the things about Ecclestone's arc. He could kind of pull that off because he was sort of dark and mysterious, but there's a meanness to him.
There is a meanness to him. There's a meanness about refusing dinner invitations. That certainly, I like to think that the 14th Doctor in retirement, sitting with the Noble family, eating around that table, is also going to invite Jackie around, and is like, okay, let's have that shepherd's pie now. Let's do it.
Alrighty, well, that's definitely a good one for traveling because it packs a lot of protein, those shepherd's pie. So, and we're about to do some traveling because we're going to pack up and then sign up for wherever the randomizer will take us next.
Yes, pausing only to note the fact that the shepherd's pie was on offer during Pi Day. That's at least when I watched it. The 3.14 is Pi Day, as we all know. But yet another reason for the randomizer to bring us to a shepherd's pie episode. But anyway, yes, the randomizer has 2 components. Pete is standing at the controls of one of them. That is the codex. That is the equivalent of watching an alien invasion on TV. It's the list of all Doctor Who stories in the order that we know and love. And then I introduced the element of the alien invasion, as it were, the invasion of randomness, the invasion of time, you might say. No, you wouldn't say. You'd say the invasion of random.org, because that's what we use. That's what I am at the controls of here. Executor, played by random.org. Which is true randomness. Algorithms, AI, they guess at randomness. They come up with a not very random number. They're just like predicting the next number in sequence, whatever. But this is true randomness based on atmospheric noise, and the fine folks at Trinity College in Ireland who run random.org would probably have noticed that alien ship actually took off from the Thames and then landed back in it. But anyway, yes, it bounces off fake Slitheen ships in the atmosphere and gives us a true random number. But before it does that, we have challenges for the randomizer. We have requests for the randomizer. We asked the randomizer to fill in our bingo cards on various things. So, Pete, what you got for the randomizer this week?
Well, this week we just did an episode where there was some kid stuff. Let's see more kid stuff. What is some real kid stuff? What's stuff aimed for the kiddies?
Yes.
I want to see it, randomizer.
Yes, more fart jokes, randomizer. No,
more candy.
More. oh, could we be going for the Candyman, perhaps?
Could be.
I'm going to say, you're going for candy. I'm going for pie. Because of Pie Day, because that's so fresh in my memory, and because of the appearance of the shepherd's pie in general, I'm now sitting here wondering, and I haven't even looked, what other Doctor Who stories have mentions of pie. Now, I'll allow either the 3.14159 or actual pie with an E. So you interpret that, randomizer. You have fun. Knock yourself out getting pie.
I would wager there's more references to the former than the latter. All right, well, so we're going for either 5 Doctors or Happiness Patrol here, apparently.
Yes, either pie and used to solve puzzles, or pie or candy used to complicate puzzles. So what I've forgotten to ask you for the number, Pete. What is the total number of stories that we have yet to do before we plunge into season 2?
That would be 172.
172. So it's gonna go up probably into the 180s again, but there's the breaks. All right.
Keeps regenerating the show. All right.
It does. And well, I will hit the generate button on our regenerated randomizer just as soon as you give me the countdown.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Buffalo. Oh, it's early. It is 32.
Oh, could have some kid stuff in this. We are at, the Curse of Peladon.
Okay.
We're doing Peladon in order.
That is, but not the curses in order. Now, that's Pertwee's final season? Is that right?
No, Curse of Peladon's early on. This happens right after Day of the Daleks. This is when they started doing more stuff with the TARDIS and stuff like that. So yeah, Peladon. I know Big Finish has returned to Peladon a few times. This is definitely sort of a favorite. There's definitely some kid stuff here in the aliens and whatnot. It's exciting. Back to Pertwee, Joe Grant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. You do the credits, and while you're doing that, I'm going to check for mentions of pie in the Curse of Peladon. So go for it.
Or appearances that may look like pie or other things among the aliens. That's probably more likely, but we'll save that for our next story, folks, which you will not be hearing for some time. So listen after we do a lot of hot takes on season 2 of Ncuti Gatwa's Doctor Who. The only way to get those hot takes, of course, is to follow or subscribe this podcast. Yes, that's a good thing to do for a podcast. Go ahead, subscribe, hang out with us. There will be good times had by all. You can, of course, follow us on the socials. I won't repeat them all here. We're Pull to Open or Pull to Open 63 on most networks. Thank you, Martin West, for your music as ever.
And yes, and one last piece of late-breaking news in the Curse of Peladon. There is no mention of pie, but I have managed to spoil myself on the potential smashing of a TARDIS because Joe says it's smashed to pieces. I'm going to choose to believe that she's not saying pieces there. Pieces, bits of pie. Yeah, that's what it meant. The TARDIS is turned into pie, so pie for everyone.
All right, this is the story that inspires the Doctor to create some indestructible pie, I believe.
There we go.
Okay, folks.
I'll see you on next Pie Day.